Hey, what is up everyone, this is Zephyr, and this video is going to be episode 2 of my beginner tutorial series on After Effects. So let's get started. In this video I'd like to explore the buttons of After Effects because there's a lot of buttons just like there's a lot of panels. So let's start off where we started off with the panels, and if you haven't seen the first episode, I'd advise going to see that first so that you're not lost right now. And I'll put that on the link in the description and on the screen. Alright, so first of all, let's go over the buttons up here on the top panel here, the tools panel. This first button is default, it's the selection tool. Not much to say about that. The next is the hand tool. Now this basically allows you to move the preview window view around without actually changing what the content is. So it's purely in order for you to view it from a different perspective and just move around, but it doesn't actually change anything. The next one is this zoom in tool. Self-explanatory, not much to say there. The next button here is the rotation tool, and this does exactly what it's named, rotates your stuff. Now the next one is the camera, and basically in After Effects, what you're looking at is the view from the default camera, but you can create a new camera and move it around and look at your project from a different perspective. Now you're not really going to know what I'm doing right here because it's a topic for a more advanced video, but I will kind of give you a preview of what I mean by that. So let me just create a camera here. Once again, you don't have to understand what I'm doing. I'm just kind of trying to show you something. Alright, so I'm going to create a camera and use this. And so I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I'm not actually moving the footage, I'm just looking at it from a different perspective. And you know, these different tools up here will do different things like zooming in and so on and so forth. So I'm going to Control Z all of that and delete the camera. So that's pretty much what it does. It controls your camera. The next tool that we need to look at is the pan behind tool. No, just kidding. You don't actually need to understand this because most people don't use it for a long time. Alright, the next one is the shapes that you can work with here. They are either for drawing something like this, or if you have the actual layer selected here, they create a mask. Okay, and Apple's gonna sue me for using rounded corners, but you can just do a mask, and if you don't know what a mask is, don't worry about that. That's once again an advanced topic. I'm just trying to get you familiar with all the buttons because there's a lot of them, as you can see, so it can be overwhelming. The next button is the pen tool. If you've used Photoshop, you're familiar with this. You can just create custom shapes like this. It also creates masks and stuff like that. So that's pretty much what that does. Next one is text. I think anyone can understand this. I'm just going to create some text. Yay, text. I'll just leave it there for fun. Okay, so next is the brush tool. Actually, all these things you don't have to worry about. That's for more advanced usage later on. So that's pretty much all these tools. The most you'll be using, most of the time you'll just be using the text tool and this, maybe the hand tool, and then the camera when you start getting more advanced. So there's not much there to be worried about. Next is the project panel here, and there aren't that many buttons. This is just to search whatever stuff you already imported, and then these columns, you know, the name of what you imported, what type of media it is, a color, tag, size, and there's other stuff. You can always right click on here and choose more columns and sort by the column and all that kind of stuff. Down here are some buttons. Don't worry about that one. This one is to create a new folder where you can you can organize stuff in folders if you want. Just put them in there. It's not really that important unless you have a big project. The next one is to create a new composition. Now, just a quick explanation. A composition is what I'm doing right now. This is a composition. It's basically like a video clip, and we'll get into that more in future videos, but you can basically create a new video project layer thing by clicking that. Alright, and then lastly it's the trash can icon. I think that's self-explanatory. But really, the main beef is all these buttons. There are a lot of them there too. Here's the thing, you're gonna just need to ignore a few of these buttons. Just visualize as if the buttons look like this. That's the only ones you actually have to worry about. This is whether you want to see it or not. It doesn't change how you output or you render the video, but it just shows you that way for preview purposes. This is the volume audio, obviously just to stop looking at the volume. Now this is to solo, which means you only see that layer, okay? So it'll hide all the other layers. That can also be useful. And locking means that you can't edit that layer. So right now I can't move around the background, but when I unlock it I can. Okay, so locking is also a really good feature. Alright, next is this little arrow. I'll show you more about this later when we get into animation, but this is kind of like the properties of the layer. The next is just a color to organize it. Don't worry about that really. You can just change it if you want. Number doesn't really matter. Name, don't worry about these. Don't worry about any of these until later. Really, this button is to make it 3D, so that if you create a camera like I just did earlier, then it will be able to make that object look like if it was, well, let me actually show you what I mean. It would be better if I show you rather than say new camera. Just create another camera here. Now notice that only the text is 3D and not the background. So when I do this camera, it only moves the text, the background stays right there. If I were to do the opposite, it would be the opposite. The text stays like that, but the background moves. So everything that has this little box here will show in 3D, if that makes any sense. As for the parent, we'll get into that later. It's just a way to kind of make things work together. Alright, and if you need more columns, you can go here to columns and click things. Another one that's important, I think, is the modes. You can change the mode of the layer and how it blends with other layers, and it's kind of a complicated thing, so it's hard to explain, but basically they're just different ways to blend them together, and you can make really cool effects by changing that up depending on what type of media it is. And people will ask you to change the mode to something during different tutorials, so you just need to know that it's accessible by going to columns and checking modes. Alright, so that's pretty much all you have to worry about. The rest of these buttons you won't be using this early. You'll use them later.